Hello everyone, today's topic is understanding clothing and clothing comfort. Before we go in depth in clothing comfort, we must understand what is clothing. Okay? So, we will first discuss about the clothing, how to select clothing, what are the factors which depend that clothing selection depends on these factors. Okay. So, first we will start with the different factors. So, why do you need clothing? So, clothing is the one of the basic needs of human being. It is the second most important basic need after food. So, human expectation is much more than the basic need, depends on the wealth, status, occupation, age, occasion, gender. There are many other factors which actually controls the selection of clothing. So, there are basic 4 factors on which clothing selection depends. So, we will first discuss the details of these factors. So, if we understand the selection of clothing, then we can explain the comfort related to this, and our area is we will actually limit ourselves the clothing related comfort. Okay. So, first factor which affects the selection of clothing is the social factors, then economic factor, then environmental factor, and last one is physiological factor. So, we will discuss all these factors one by one. Okay. So, if we see the factors for clothing, so these are the 4 factors I have already mentioned: the social factor, economic factor, environmental factor, and physiological factor. So, if we subdivide these factors, so there are factors actually the social factors can be subdivided into 6 subgroups. So, whether the person is from rural or urban background, that clothing selection depends on that factor. His cultural background, the particular zone from which he is coming. Although this rural and cultural background nowadays getting normalized due to cosmopolitan nature of the urban cities, but still it exists. We can make out the person's actually social background from his clothing also nowadays. Then gender, occupation, occasion, and social status. So, these factors we will discuss one by one, and after that economic factor. So, economic factor is divided into 3 sub factors. These subgroups are socio-economic condition of the society, then economic status of individual person, and then availability of raw material and technology for a particular zone or particular country. So, depending on these factors, the person selects his clothing. Then comes another important factor, which is environmental factor. Actually, this environmental factor is that factor which controls the comfort related characteristics most, which affects them. These are the climatic condition of a particular place, protection from extreme condition. So, you may select clothing depending on the extreme condition requirement. Like extreme cold condition, you will require different clothing than extreme hot or normal condition. So, clothing selection depends on the whether it is a you need protection from extreme condition or not. And then under unusual condition, there are various unusual situations like your army. So, there his selection, his ballistic proof clothing is there, firefighter or even space suit or deep sea clothing. So, these are the clothing which actually needs special attention. Okay. Then physiological factor of a particular person. So, physiological factors are subdivided into 5 subgroups. These are the age of person. So, at different age people's physiological conditions are different. So, they need different clothing. Similarly, health condition. So, we will discuss one by one. Then physical structure of a person, whether they are tall, short or different. So, clothing selection depends, and thermophysiological response of a person. It varies person to person. So, I may feel warm or due to my metabolic condition. So, that my selection of clothing will be controlled by this condition, and level of activity. So, suppose at different level of activity you need different type of clothing. So, that we will discuss one by one. So, first is the social factor. Social factor means the where a person live. Is he from urban area or from rural area? You can make out the difference. So, it actually from his background, from the rural background. So, it as I told that it gradually it minimizes, but still exists. Cultural background. So, in our country or even in worldwide, people can be identified based on the clothing. So, that depends on the many factors, depends on the social requirement or cultural requirement and all this. Third one is the obviously it is very obvious that gender wise we select clothing. Okay. That is occupation. So, some for a particular occupation needs particular type of clothing. One is to identify themselves, like or some special requirement, like doctor they wear a gown, protective gown to protect themselves from different microbial attack or different. Similarly, for firefighter they will require different clothing, for police, for nurse. So, depending on the occupation they select the clothing. And occasion. So, I will wear a formal cloth or casual wear or party wear depending on the occasion. Okay. So, I will definitely not wear a party wear always. So, depending on the occasion. So, these are the social factors and also social status of the person. Nowadays it may not exist, but earlier days. So, royal they would like to wear a different type of clothing than common person. So, these are the factors which actually control the social factors which control the selection of clothing. Next come economic factor. So, economic condition of the society. A society which is say supposed to be poor or rich, you can make out from their selection of clothing, their affordability, and also it is a economic status of the particular person, his income. Okay. And depending on their income, job, position. Okay. So, they select the clothing depending on these factors. Okay. Third one is the it is very important, it is availability of technology and raw material. Like if the raw material is locally available for a particular area, people and also technology is available, people would like to select their clothing based on this fiber and all this. Like in India, cotton is available, plenty. So, India basic clothing is made of cotton based, it is cotton based clothing. Or in cold zone, in India even in cold zone you will find that it is basically where your in if you go to the Himachal Pradesh and all this, where it is a cold zone and wool is available. Okay. And locally available technology to convert wool fiber to yarn and then fabric, you will find their clothing is depending on this technology. So, depending on the availability of technology and raw material, people try to select this thing. Suppose we will not try to wear will not try to select those type clothing which the fibers are not available here locally or technology is not available. So, this is the main one of the most important driving force for selection of clothing. Third is, which is very important, and as I have told that it directly controls the clothing comfort. Okay. So, first one is the climatic condition. So, whether it is a winter or summer or rainy season, we select our clothing accordingly. So, that is a very common, okay, and to keep ourselves comfortable. So, that type of clothing selection is there. Then comes the protection from extreme environment. Here comfort comes in the second phase. First is the protection. Suppose a army personnel, he is in battlefield. So, his first priority is that it is not the comfort, first priority is the protection from the bullet. So, after that protection then comes the comfort. So, comfort is required for his better performance. Similarly, for extreme heat, firefighters first priority is to protect himself from fire. He does not get damaged, injured by the fire, but at the same time the comfort is also required. So, we will discuss in later classes that how to improve the clothing comfort of all these things, protective clothing. Protection from radiation. So, we have to select clothing based on all this environment, extreme environment. Then comes unusual space, as we have discussed, like space suit. So, for space suit we first have to analyze the requirement of the space suit, and accordingly we will design the clothing. Like swimwear, for swimmer we need special type of clothing, hazardous place and all this. So, unusual place we have to select clothing, we have to design our clothing, and also we have to impart the comfort. And then it comes the physiological factor. Physiological factor first comes age. As we know that age, according to age our metabolic heat generation changes, and also our skin structure changes. So, we have to select clothing accordingly. Okay. At different particular clothing, particular type of fiber may not be suitable for different age. So, age of a person, as we have discussed. Next is that condition of health of person. So, if someone has allergy or irritation in skin, so he will select a particular clothing according to his health requirement. Okay. Or a particular person who has electronic gadget in within his body, so he will select clothing accordingly. Okay. So, this depend on the health of a person and body structure. So, different type of people, they will require different clothing depending on their body structure. Then physiological factor is the physiological response of the body. So, comfort of an individual varies for same type of clothing. So, different person will react, will respond differently. So, that also depending on the particular person's requirement, a comfort we have to select the clothing, and then comes the activity, level of activity. So, if I am sitting idle, so I will require a different clothing than when I am doing some activity. So, that depending on the body physiological activity and the sweat generation and heat generation. So, I will select my clothing. Then as we have discussed, so how to define clothing now? Comfort. So, comfort we have discussed that comfort is the is influenced by physiological reaction of the wearer. Also comfort is the temperature regulation of the body. Comfort is absence of unpleasantness or discomfort, and comfort is a state of pleasant psychological, physiological and physical harmony of human being and environment. So, this all four definitions actually it's valid for them. It's basically ultimately it's a psychological response of a body. Okay. So, and the basic elements are we have also mentioned. First is the thermophysiological aspect of the clothing. What is thermophysiological aspect? It is a basically transmission of heat, air, moisture in a liquid form, in a sweat or in vapor form from the body to the environment, okay, in between. Sensorial or tactile aspect. So, a person may feel comfortable during the transmission for a particular fabric, it transmits very nicely or it protects heat very nicely, but he may not feel comfortable due to tactile sensation. If it is rough, if it is harsh, okay, it is not flexible, it is not soft, so he may feel uncomfortable. So, tactile sensation is also important. Third one is the psychological aspect. So, a person the clothing, does it look good, whether it is a lustrous or not, a drape is good or not, color is beautiful or unusual color, creasing, peeling, staining, all these things are actually psychologically affect the clothing comfort. So, the aesthetic property, which is actually you cannot measure, objectively. A particular fabric, a particular drape may be aesthetically beautiful for me, may not be aesthetically beautiful for other. So, it is actually personally person to person it varies, and then it is a fitting comfort. A particular clothing fitting wise it is very nice, but it may not be comfortable for my body movement. So, in that case its tactile comfort is not good. So, all these four basic elements send signal to our brain, and brain evaluates and finally gives a comfort sensation. So, in the next segment we will discuss the psychological aspects of clothing. Okay. So, and then the how this total all this sensation we receive from different parts of the body. There are four different factors which controls the clothing comfort, which are called 4 F's of clothing factor. First is then function, then feel. Function means the functionality of clothing, functionality of fabric, okay. How the fabric transmits the moisture, transmits the heat, this comes under functionality. Then feel, the touch of the body, the handle of the fabric. Okay. This fabric it feels soft, okay. That comes under feel. Then fit, as we have discussed, fit is directly or indirectly related to the pressure exerted on the body, ease of our body movement. Okay. This fabric may be nicely fit, but it actually hinders my free body movement. So, that this type of comfort comes under fit. And then fashion, obviously fashion is actually it is a psychological one. Sometimes it is diametrically opposite to the function. Okay. So, that we will discuss. Now, coming to the function, the functions related to clothing comfort parameters are thermal transmission. So, thermal transmission, by measuring the thermal transmission, we can tell whether this fabric is suitable or whether the fabric is going to be comfortable or not, but we cannot say it will be 100% comfortable. Suppose I have developed one fabric with very good thermal transmission, but it does not have the softness, it is harsh. So, that then it will fail. So, thermal transmission, if we want to control, we can control by fabric thickness, yarn or fabric structure, porosity, etc. So, if we want to have higher insulation, so what we have to do? We have to increase the thickness. If we increase thickness, so ultimately one thing what we are doing, we are incorporating more and more material in that, also more and more air, still air we are trying to entrap. So, that makes the fabric insulating. So, accordingly we can engineer the fabric by enhancing the thickness. Also what we can do, we can also increase the thickness by not by incorporating extra material, but by incorporating the extra air pocket. So, one best example is that the woolen acrylic made of bulk yarn. So, by changing the yarn structure, so by incorporating the air inside the steel air inside the yarn or fabric structure, we can change the thermal insulation, or incorporating the porosity. If we make the yarn porous, we can make the yarn highly insulating. Okay. So, simply by changing the yarn or fabric structure, we can control the thermal insulation. Moisture. So, moisture also we can, if we can control the moisture vapor or liquid moisture transmission, we can control the functionality of clothing as far as comfort is concerned, and these are controlled by selection of proper type of fiber. Like as I have already mentioned, if we want to transmit the liquid moisture, the water or sweat, we have to select a particular fiber which does not absorb moisture, but transmits weak moisture. So, for say extreme sweating condition is we can take the example of the active sportswear, high active sportswear, where the sports person are in a very high active level and the sweat generation is at very high rate. We can have say around 2 liters per hour sweat. So, if we use a fiber which absorb moisture like cotton, what will happen? It will absorb moisture and the structure will be saturated, and cotton absorb moisture, but it cannot transmit moisture quickly. So, in that case what will happen? The fabric will or clothing will get wet and the mass of the clothing will increase, and the wet clothing, the heat transmission will be very fast, and the athlete will or player will feel uncomfortably cold and heavy fabric, and ultimately he will feel uncomfortable. So, what is the way? We have to select fiber which absorbs, which transmits moisture quickly. So, the best way is that you select a fiber like polyester which does not absorb, and special cross section with high shape factor. If you select polyester, that will give very high wicking rate. This all these aspects we will discuss gradually. Weave structure. So, depending on the weave structure, we can control the moisture transmission. And say cotton fiber is suitable for very good moisture in vapor form, transmission of moisture in vapor form. So, in case of cotton, it absorbs moisture vapor at slow rate and it transmits. There are mechanisms that we will discuss. So, by controlling, by selecting a typical fiber, typical weave structure, and the finish application, different type of finish application, we can absorbent finish. So, we can control the moisture transmission. Okay. Water absorbency. If we need a particular clothing to absorb water, or it transmits, first you have to absorb moisture and then you have to transmit. It has to. So, fiber type, finishes, weave type, by controlling or design of the clothing, by controlling all these things, we can actually control the water absorbency. And last one is the drying behavior. Drying behavior is extremely important. If the fabric absorbs moisture and does not actually dry quickly, then it cannot provide comfort. So, these are the function related characteristics. So, drying behavior depends on again fiber type, fabric design and all this. The next primary factor is that it is a feel, it is a touch of the body. Now, feel we can have in two different ways. So, two distinct area of feel. One is by feeling by finger, between thumb and finger. So, we normally try to feel the cloth by thumb and finger, and another one is that feel of cloth by the wearer. A particular fabric may be very soft, okay, may be very soft when we feel by thumb and finger, and if we select the fabric based on that criteria, we may land up with a wrong decision. So, just I will this picture will give the idea about the fabric handle characteristics. When we select, normally we select fabric based on all these characteristics by bending. We try to bend the fabric by finger to see that whether it is a flexible or not. Stretching, we try to stretch the fabric, we try to press the fabric whether it is compressible or not, whether it is soft or not. Rubbing, whether its friction is high or not, whether it will give you scratchiness or not, and shearing. So, all these characteristics we try to do, and based on all this parameter we have to take decision. So, we will end up with taking wrong decision only by feeling the cloth by thumb and finger. Suppose one example is that a fabric is very soft, okay, and it is a thick one, a thick layer of say nonwoven, it is very soft. Now, if we take decision based on this softness, then if we see that fabric is it is not it is a very stiff one. If we make a clothing out of a thick nonwoven, what will happen? It is a feel will not get good feel because of the stiff in nature. Okay. So, we have to take care of all these aspects. So, for a fabric it should not be harsh enough. So, by rubbing we can take. So, all these aspects we will discuss in tactile sensation. We can measure by Kawabata evaluation tester and all these things that we will discuss. Next is the fit. Fit may incorporated by the designer. Okay. So, you can have very good fit, okay, and sometime the fit, as I have mentioned, it may be diametrically opposite to that of comfort. A fabric may have very good fit, okay, but sometime it is uncomfortable. Okay. So, applied pressure is related to the fit. If we am wearing a loose fit clothing, the applied pressure is less, but loose fit clothing, the issue is that if I am wearing a loose fit clothing and I am sitting idle, then the clothing will give you the required insulation due to entrapment of the steel air. Okay. But on the other hand, if I am wearing a tight fit clothing, so it will restrict my body movement and it will give undue pressure on the body, and I may feel uncomfortable. Okay. But the tight fit clothing, it will give you very good thermal transmission because of less entrapment of heat. So, ultimately our brain takes signal, receives signal from all these aspects and finally judge this thing. And fashion is basically totally related to the psychological component, which is actually we will not discuss in this area, it is not our area, but it is directly related to the psychological comfort fashion. Okay. Now, coming to the comfort and wearer's attitude. So, comfort we can now divide into two aspects. One is the fabric aspect, clothing aspect, material aspects, and next one is the wearer's attitude. I can have a very good thermal transmission, moisture transmission, all sorts of tactile related characteristics very good, but if it is not liked by the wearer, then it is fail, it is not comfortable. Okay. So, psychologically he is not comfortable. So, that is why wearer attitude towards that particular clothing is very important. So, we will discuss one by one. So, comfort we can actually broadly divide into two aspects. One is the fabric or clothing aspect, characteristics of clothing, and then attitude of the clothing towards the clothing of the wearer. So, comfort and satisfaction with the clothing influenced by both characteristics of clothing related to the material as well as attitudinal and psychological perception of the wearer, which is beyond the clothing material. Okay. These are you have to take care while selecting a clothing for a particular comfort aspect. So, you have to take care of all these aspects. of very good clothing, very good material may fail if the wearer does not like, okay. If he does not, if it is not, he does not feel comfortable. Okay. So, that both these things we have to take care. So, characteristics of clothing, it depends on, it is basically physical characteristics of fiber. So, this characteristics of clothing, it depends on the physical characteristics of fiber and material used. So, as we have discussed, if we want high moisture absorption, we have to select particular fiber or particular material, particular yarn, fabric. Tactile characteristics of clothing, with the touch wise it gives very good feel, and thermophysiological characteristics of clothing. So, this all these things are related to the clothing as material. So, this is controllable, this we can control, okay. But the thing which we cannot control, this all these three things we can control, which we cannot control is the wearer's attitude. It is dynamic, it changes with the time, changes with the fashion. So, that thing we have to take care of, and also our idea is to first analyze the wearer's attitude, then incorporate the comfort, then select the other parameters, select the fiber, select the material. Okay. So, all these things we can select. So, wearer's attitude, it is basically first thing is the sensory attributes of the clothing, that depends, it is whether it is a warm touch or cool touch. So, I like warm touch clothing, okay. So, that means my attitude towards that. I like little bit stiffer fabric, it is my attitude. So, that particular aspect we have to take first. Then only, suppose from the market survey we have come into conclusion that 90% people want the harsh fabric, okay, harsh fabric. So, that means there is no point of going developing a soft fabric. So, you have to select your material like that and try to incorporate other comfort related characteristics. So, person requires harsh fabric, warm touch, absorbent. So, these are the characteristics, these are the information you have to gather from the wearer's attitude. Serviceability, I do not bother about the durability, I want softness. So, develop fabric like that depending on, otherwise it is useless. Creasing, I may require a very good crease, but some other I do not require, it is a casual look I need. So, you have to first understand the wearer's attitude towards your clothing. See, if I do not like say softness, whatever softness you provide, I will not like it. Expected comfort and satisfaction related to attributes. So, it is a experience based. So, I know this linen fabric, it gives very good coolness. So, I will definitely go for the linen or cotton. Cotton is it is a soft, I like softness. So, I will go for cotton. So, depending on the prior experience of the clothing. Next is that information obtained by interpersonal discussion or advertisement analysis. So, my friend he told me that okay, this is the cloth which gives you very good, I will go for that. But irrespective of the factor that material factor, so these are the attitude. Like example, when if I ask when you think of sweater, a company would like to launch a sweater. So, they would try to gather information about the what are the basic basic requirement, basic characteristics people want from the sweater, like denim, jeans. they will first ask you which color you like, what type of denim, do you like thicker denim or lighter denim or stretchable or not. So, whether blue denim or, so this type of attitude you have to first study, then we can without these things the clothing comfort does not mean anything. So, this type of questionnaire we can get, then we can analyze and select. So, as we have discussed, the material related characteristics will give you some physical parameter, but psychological, the wearer attitude we have to take into consideration. Okay. Like 50 years back, if you see that polyester was the actually it is in high demand. People wearing polyester, if they feel it is comfortable, it is very good, but now we do not like polyester. The trend is towards the natural fiber. So, it depends on the attitude. So, design feature of the clothing, what is the latest design. So, that actually it is you have to, that actually indirectly gives you the psychological comfort. Brand level, information on garment care, price also obviously, it is if it is highly expensive, someone like okay, it is if it is expensive he will simply buy, and ultimately he will feel psychologically comfortable. So, these are the attitude towards. So, design feature of the clothing, brand level, information on garment care and price. So, to study the wearer's attitude, there is a analysis technique which is known as conjoint analysis technique. What is this? It is a survey based statistical technique used in market research that helps determine how people value different attributes like feature, function, its benefit, and that make up an individual product and service. So, first you have to analyze the wearer's attitude, then you decide the type of clothing. So, this is widely used by a researcher for assessing consumer attitude towards the clothing. In actually in clothing industry, this technique, conjoint analysis technique, is used before you decide the comfort, okay, clothing. This technique deals with the factors related to the consumer attitude and behavioral intentions by the multi attitude choice alternative within a specified experimental design. So, you have to design some specified experimental design, you have to evolve, then gradually you get information. Okay. So, this goes in, it works backward. What does it mean? You get information first, then as I have told, then you develop your clothing, you select your fiber, you select your clothing, you select your color, okay? And the product attributes are dependent variable. The product attributes that dependent on the this attitude. And now we will stop here, and next class we will discuss the human clothing interaction. Okay, thank you.